All right.
All right. Can you hear me now, Justin?
Yes.
All right.
I had to use my phone's Wi-Fi hotspot because my internet is that horrible.
Yeah, mine's not the best either. We run around maybe 10 meg at the best.
I don't even know what mine is. I need to contact them tomorrow and figure out what the deal is.
But we're out of range, and I have no choice. We only have one provider, so it's this or
Uh,
not. It's this or nothing for us.
Yeah, I got you.
Hello,
Phil?
Hello, Phil.
Mr. Vicente. The pleasure is all mine.
Jack, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So it's crazy because I was actually on here before both of you guys, and I was watching in the group chat of you guys having the technical difficulties, and I'm thinking, oh, I got time to restart my modem too, and then I'm late as always.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having to use my mobile hotspot on my phone just to get a regular signal.
Well, mine's been cutting out too, so we're
Well,
here.
looks like we got it together now. It's good.
Absolutely.
Well, this is episode 168 of Snakes and Stogies, which is brought to you by Fulvius Apparel. Check it out, fulviusapparel.com, Facebook and Instagram. The fine folks at blackboxcages.com. Check them out as well, Facebook, Instagram. Use code THN at checkout, save yourself a little bit of money. And then Puget Sound Pythons, the good folks of the Pacific Northwest, give them a follow, Facebook and Instagram as well.
Jack, do you have headphones, sir, or no?
No, I don't. Actually, I'm screaming this into my hearing aids.
Oh, okay. If you turn down the volume on your computer, would that change your hearing aids?
I don't. I'm strictly on the phone. I couldn't get in on the computer at all.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering if because we're getting a pretty bad echo from Smitty and I speaking, so I didn't know if turning the volume down your phone would affect your actual ability to hear us or not.
I can turn this. I turn the volume down. I can still hear you. What did that help?
It sounds like it did. It sounds like it did.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got it.
Awesome.
Time for the
All right.
25-minute black box ad.
Yes.
Okay, blast off.
Well, what's funny is, unlike some other shows, which there's nothing wrong with this, but unlike some other shows, our sponsor segment, if you will, is
Right.
completely off the cuff. We have no pre-recorded anything, so it's all from the Smitty vocal cords as he lights his cigar. So, what are we smoking tonight, Smitty?
So Raj dug up a box of these Guardian of the Farms. And we were talking about the ambering of the cellophane last week.
Right.
I just threw it away like an idiot. Here it is.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So you can see the nice darkening of that cellophane there. That is the sign of a well-aged smoke.
Yeah, it's not just his shirt shining through.
In comparison,
Yeah, there you go. That's a great comparison.
to a brand new.
Can you hold both of them up at the same time? Oh yeah. Good in age.
Yeah, he must have really dug this box out of nowhere because it was completely full, unopened, just sitting on the shelf. And I got excited because I love these.
Nice. Excellent.
What about you?
Well, I've been rereading some Hemingway lately, and I was like, you know what? All my cigars are packed because, for those who are unaware, I'm going to be moving next week, and not far, just across town. And Hemingway was always an Arturo Fuente guy, so I wound up picking up a Grand Reserve Bellicoso. So nothing crazy, but just a good solid smoke, Hemingway style.
Those are very popular.
Oh, so this is actually going to be my last show from the tennis courts forever.
Right.
Forever. No more sirens, no more echoes, no more crazy people walking past me at random. So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Well, we're here to talk about some coral snakes and some other odds and ends. We had Jack on THP. It's been like 2 years now, I think, give or take.
It's been two or 3 years. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
long before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as always, I mean, there's always more questions that pop up, and I love Fulvius, as I'm
I
sure
can tell by
everyone.
your shirt. I love your shirt.
So figured we've actually been working on this for a while as far as getting Jack back on here and stuff. So where did I put my notes?
So yes, if anyone wants some amazing herp memorabilia, apparel, headwear, whatever you want to call it, check out Fulvius Apparel. And isn't there a promo code going on right now, Justin?
Oh, there is free shipping, and for the US folks, use the code SEND IT at checkout, all one word.
Nice.
Now until the end of the month.
Okay.
Oh.
Hell yeah, brother.
Anything new update wise?
Well, the Gendra wanted to know if my snake room is going to be larger in the new place. And it will not only be larger, it's actually like 1/3 larger than what I got right now. And I'm going to do this right. It's not a permanent room. It's temporary room until Anna Marie and I can get our own place together. So I don't want to go too crazy setting it up in decor and such, but at the same time, it's a great excuse to literally gut everything, redo every substrate, every piece of decor. I've got black box cages that are still empty, never had an animal inside them. Those are all going to get set up with backdrops and plants and everything. So, and like, let's be real. When's the last time anyone dusted in between their rack drawers? Like, it's got to happen. So actually Wednesday, I'm going to be taking every animal that's in a rack is going to come out, get deli cupped, containered into transport containers, and then the racks are just going to get gutted. I'm going to be checking the heat tape and making sure there's no warping or anything, and then dust. Plus, it'll be the first time in God knows how long the thermostats have been turned off. So let those circuit boards chill out for a hot minute and then reset everything back up. So I got a lot of work ahead of me, but I'm very excited for it. So.
You're gonna let those fuses cool off, and then when you plug them back in, they're just gonna pop.
Well, thanks for jinxing me. Thanks. It's good.
They're cheap. Fuses are cheap.
So, but it's good, man. That's all it is on my front.
Nothing really new to report here. This rhino rat female is going to drop what seems like any minute now. She's been pacing like crazy in and out of the lay box. Fully expecting something within the next 24 hours or so. And got the egg box and the incubator ready to go. And that's pretty much it.
Good stuff, man. No news is good news.
That's right.
Well, would you like to introduce our fabulous guest? Legit?
Absolutely. So if anybody listened to the THP episode we did a couple of years ago with Jack, in terms of like professionals in the herp world, Jack is very high on my list of people that I like what they're doing and look up to very much. And so I'm anxious to talk about some microurus and dive a little deeper into that stuff, more so than we did, I think, the first round. But for anybody that doesn't know, we can do sort of the Cliff Notes version of what you're doing, Jack, and what you're focused on.
Okay, well, the focus initially was to, as everybody remembers, Pfizer bought Wyeth Pharmaceutical back in 2017 or 18. Wyeth stopped producing the antivenom. Basically, probably we assume because there was no market. coral snake bites are an orphan disease, and with less than 100 bites a year, for whatever reason, Wyeth stopped production. So they let
and this
that
was a
antivenom.
monovalent venom, right?
Yes, it is only made from Mycurus fulvius. However, it is marketed to be used on Mycurus tenor, the Texas coral as well, and that's the only two species of coral snakes that it's FDA approved for.
Okay.
And it's a whole IgG product, which means it's it's kind of ugly. It's not purified, and there are a high rate of serum sickness from it, which is treatable with steroids or a prednisone type pack. But the formula remained the same. So when Wyeth stopped making it, the FDA extended the expiration of that product for years. It ran out in 2008, and we were using this old product in 2000 all the way up to 2016. So what happened was they would allocate certain lot numbers, and that made the antivenom very hard to secure. So all of the organizations and your providers at the hospital, they don't have access to this antivenom. So then the protocol to treat a coral snake bite was, let's wait for symptoms before we use or waste the antivenom. And we found out real fast that was a mistake, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But then as time went on, Pfizer bought Wyeth, and Pfizer stepped up to the plate and started to produce a new North American coral snake antivenom. And they didn't change the formula, so they didn't have to go through 3, 4, 5 years of clinical trials and go through all that FDA approval. They just were able to keep the same formula, go into production, make it, and boom, we have it. And that was a good thing as far as it, expeditious and getting it out there. And the good part was now it became readily available. And now all the poison control centers weren't going crazy trying to, knock it around and figure out where it was and try to redistribute it, try to locate it. And it was available for any hospital that wanted to stock it. Okay, so now the fact that the antivenom is readily available, we need to relook at how we're going to treat a coral snake bite. And particularly fulvius. The eastern coral snake is about 2.3 times as toxic as the tenor or the Texas coral snake. Wow, and the venom's different. The venom's different. The venom in the fulvius, it's a PLA2, a phospholipid A2, that is sort of the takedown toxin, if you will, and it is a paralytic toxin. In the tenor, it's a 3-finger toxin. Okay. The 3-finger toxin in the tenor binds postsynaptically after the synapse. Mm-hmm. And when the antivenom is given, it releases and neutralizes. However, fulvius does not do that. Fulvius toxin, the PLA2, is a presynaptic toxin. It binds at the start of the synapse, and what happens is once it binds, the antivenom is not going to release it. The only thing that's going to get that synapse back working is cell death, and then a period of days to weeks. And during this process, you're on a respirator because your diaphragm has been paralyzed. So now the importance is, hey, let's not wait for symptoms. Generally speaking, with fulvius, the symptoms start in the bulbar paralysis, which is in the head, ptosis, droopy eyelids, excessive salivation, slurring of the speech. Okay, when you see that onset, then the diaphragm paralysis is coming within an hour or two generally. The good thing is you do have time with a coral snake before that happens. You've got several hours. Of course, that's all dependent on where it bit you. Did it get a good bite? Did you get a decent load or weak load? And for whatever reason, coral snakes have a very poor delivery system. So most of the bites, they do not get the amount of venom in there that they're capable of, or it'd be a whole different story. So back to the process of how do we treat it now. Now the general recommendation is if we're sure there's a bite, in other words, if the person saw the snake bite them, and they know it was a positive coral snake identification, give the antivenom. Don't wait for symptoms. And that puts the strain on the ER doctor and the attending physician, because they're sitting there, and that now they got to rely on this person. And just as well as I do, when people that are not snake people or herpers, they have a very poor recollection of really what happened.
Yeah.
And the size, everything can change. So, but at any rate, the antivenom works very well on Fulvius because it's only made with Fulvius venom. So it doesn't really neutralize tenor as well. But fortunately, Dr. Spencer Green, who treats a lot of coral snake bites in Texas, he very seldom uses antivenom. He can generally manage it with just monitoring and get them through. And when he does use antivenom, he does prefer to use the Costa Rican antivenom, which does neutralize tenor well. It's not FDA approved, so that brings in all kinds of other problems. It's
Yeah, a
some
lot of
physicians
doctors
will
are really hesitant to use that kind of stuff, right?
Well, you can't blame them, because
Oh, no, for sure.
even if the patient dies, he's not going to sue the doctor, but the patient's family will. And frankly, a lot of good doctors will use it. They'll do it no matter what. They'll use it if it's expired. They'll use it, even if it's not FDA approved, if they have it. And that is the case with most of the exotic bites. I mean, none of that stuff's approved. And if the person comes in with the antivenom doesn't have an IND, which is it's the FDA saying, okay, you can use this, and then the doctor can use it with no liability. And most of the people don't have that. Well, it's a mess. But back to the coral snake deal. It's very toxic. The yields of these snakes has been really it's been out of whack a little bit. And what we've done here is Agritoxins started to produce with two other laboratories here in Central Florida. George Van Horn was working with Pfizer, and he got the contract to produce 100 grams of eastern coral snake venom for this project. And he got with me and Carl Barden. Carl has Reptile Discovery Center, MedTox in DeLand. And the three of us had to pool our collections. We keep them in three separate locations because we thought we needed 500 snakes to start. So this was our focus. And we've got it now to where if we can maintain 300, approximately 100 in each location, we can produce what they need. It takes a lot of extractions to produce enough coral snake to immunize the horses, the horse colony that they're doing. So that was a focus. Now, so anyway, going through all this, just producing the venom became a trick because it's small amounts, and you got to figure out, how not to waste it. You can't over rinse it. You can't. We developed all little procedures when you're dealing with small snakes, small yield, to not waste or lose any. And that was working well. And then we started losing the snakes, and the snakes don't eat in captivity well. I've gotten tenor to eat. There's a young gentleman that's really having good luck with tenor, eating even scented mice, scented snakes. Fulvius coral snakes, I've not been able to get them to eat mice. They will eat very well if you got rat snakes, ringnecks, etc. And that's fine if you're keeping one or two. But if you're going to keep 100, I would literally need, probably 300 snakes a month to feed these snakes. And now you've added a lot of man hours, and you've added a lot of time to do that. The way we focus now is we capture the snake, we extract the venom, we tube it, and we put it back in. So over the period of 2 years, we had to develop a formula that would allow them to gain weight, but not have to be fed every week or two, because they have a high metabolism. And, I don't care how careful you are, putting the tube down the esophagus stresses the snake. You can tear the esophagus if you go too fast. If you go too deep, you have issues. If you don't go deep enough, you have regurgitation. The formula we use is, the main ingredient is Gerber #2 baby food, chicken and gravy. And we've added other ingredients to that to up the calories, and get some better nutrients to where I can do these snakes now every 21 days. Every 3 weeks, I can feed these snakes and extract.
Wow.
They maintain or gain weight, and they breed, and they do well. And most of the collection I have now is from 2012 when I started doing this new formula. Everything just started living. So that was a good thing. We learned a lot from that. I've done some other snakes in here, some Mexican snakes and a couple of tenor, and they do well on the formula too. I've had some small rattlesnakes and oddball things that were having feeding issues, and they do well on the formula to get them going. But then you get them onto a natural diet. So,
Right.
so while we're going through this, and we conquered how to keep them alive, and because they're hard to get. You can't just call a breeder up and say, "Hey, I want to buy coral snakes," or somebody that has a license and is, a hunter or a collector. They will catch them for you if they happen upon them, but nobody's going to go out and start turning the dirt to hunt for coral snakes. They're a subterranean type guy, and
frequent do that.
Oh, nobody will do it. So anyway,
or people can't get it done.
They can't get it done.
Like two of the guys on the screen.
Well, I tell you though, we rely on the people around us and word of mouth, and I really have to commend both the private herp folks that bring us our snakes and the commercial guys that do too. And then we get a lot of calls and we go out and get them. I can't tell somebody that calls me that has a coral snake, I can't say put it in a bucket and catch it, right? Because Phil, as you know, in Florida, that's against the law, and that's a whole nother other thing we can get into. So that's an issue. But the private sector, both private individuals, collectors, and commercial collectors have been a great help to the venom folks that need their help, and they're under the gun right now. We could talk about that a little bit later. But back to the project. So while we're going through all of this, we got into a deal with Florida State, and they wanted to do a geographic venom study on a venom. Because you'll hear that there's venom variations geographically. In other words, a rattlesnake in one part of the state may have a few different proteins or toxins in it than the one in the south part of the state, and we call that a geographical variation. So I worked with Darren Rokita, Dr. Rokita's lab in FSU. They had a great program going. And he had quite a few snakes from around his area. And at that point, I needed a lot of snakes. And he said, "Hey, we'll get these snakes for you for your venom project. And maybe you could get venom samples," because I had coral snakes from 28 counties in Florida. And so we went through that, and they wrote a terrific paper. Coral snake venom is the same everywhere you go. It's there's no geographic variation with coral snake. So it's stable. However,
what about from neonate to adult?
Okay. However, working with Dr. Bill Hayes in Loma Linda, who does a lot of ontogenetic studies, which is, the juvenile neonate to adult venom, he wanted to study to see if there was an ontogenetic shift in the coral snake. So here's what I did. I bred a couple. And I put two giant coral snakes together, like 33 and 34 inches. And I thought, boy, I'm going to get a good gene pool. Generally, it's like, 3 to 6, 3 to 8 eggs that you'll get on the average. And I'm thinking, this is wonderful. Well, that female laid 18 eggs, which I do believe. Wow. So instead of getting a handful of giant coral snakes, I get 18 little miniatures that come out of these mother and father. So I was able to get the parents' venom collected for the study. And then we went ahead, and they were so small that it took all of them. I took 10 out of the 18, set them aside, and we're going to extract from these 10. And we'll get venom, every quarter for a year. So that's what we did. We looked at that. He said, if we could carry this a step further, and for year 2, let's get venom from them individually. And so that's where we're at now. We took 4 out of that group of 10 and set them aside. And every quarter I've collected venom from each of those 4 individually. And come September, we will, that will be the end of their 2-year. And then he'll be able to take all of these samples and see if there's an ontogenetic shift. And we'll be able to study that shift from out of the egg all the way up to the 2-year mark. And we think there is. We think there is.
Yeah, I mean, knowing how tiny they are out of the egg, because they are ridiculously small.
Yeah.
Like, you got to wonder, I mean, they must be eating like neonate Antilla or like something tiny.
They're about 7 inches out of the egg. They weigh 4 grams. They're capable of delivering 1/3 of a gram, 1/3 of a milligram of venom, 1/3 of a milligram, 0.33 milligrams of venom on a bite. Well, let me tell you, I've had before, and I've kept them together, you know, when they were born, and I'd keep them 2 or 3 weeks, and then, you know, I would generally let them go, try to put them back in the county they came from, because I had no interest in raising them. It's a lot of work. Well, here I am. I got to raise these guys, and so while we had this group being born, I had 2 other groups being born, and I'm overrun with them. So I was keeping like 5 or 6 in a 5-gallon aquariums. And on week 3, they're still pretty fat and they're still pretty good, and they got a lot of egg yolk. I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and start the feeding process here. And I go in there, and half of the coral snakes are gone. They were eating each other. And I've got some pictures of the 7-inch coral snake eating another 7-inch coral snake with 2 inches hanging out of its mouth for a couple of days until it digested it and then took the rest down.
Wow.
So they I imagine in the wild they got a high metabolism. They eat a lot of snakes. Now, we have tried sending everything. I've tried earthworms, I've tried ant larvae, I've tried lizard tails. I did have some luck with animal tails on a couple of them, but it's sporadic. Could not get the babies to eat anything. So anyway, we decided that the only way we can make them guys live is to get a very small catheter. Well, now the formula is too thick. You got to thin it, and it just a whole nother host of problems come in. But we cracked the code, and we were able to feed these guys. I had to feed those every 10 days for a year. Wow. Because that they go through it. But I got a good growth rate records. And while we're doing this and we're looking at venom variants, I'm thinking this is a perfect opportunity to study the yields. And so out of hundreds and hundreds of probably 500 to 600 extractions, what we found was the 7 inches at birth out of the egg can give 1/3 of a milligram. A 16-inch snake at about maybe year 12, 1 year to 14 months, they can give 2.5 milligrams. A subadult, which we call a 20 to 24 inch range, about 43 grams in weight, they can give 8.5 milligrams. And the average adult 30 plus 150 gram snake can give 22 milligrams in a bite. Wow. Now, 22 milligrams is a tremendous amount of coral snake venom. Mm-hmm. Because while we don't really know what a lethal dose is, because they've not done that with humans. They go by the LD50, but it's assumed by the best we can with the data that 2 to 4 milligrams could be a lethal dose. Wow. So we could get you in a paralytic condition. Mm-hmm. So here you got these adults given 22, and then you look at the antivenom. One vial will neutralize 2 milligrams. So 22 grams divided by 2, you need 11 plus vials of antivenom for that big of a bite. Wow. So the loading dose is now 5 vials. Pretty much the poison control center, if you're going to give antivenom, give 5 and then monitor. And for whatever reason, and I can't explain it other than the short fangs and the poor delivery. And, when people get bit, there's all kinds of stuff involved. Even if they step on it, the snake could have bitten something else on the way to bite them. Right. They never ever get the full dose.
Yeah.
Very, very seldom. Very, very seldom you'll hear of somebody going on a respirator, and you hardly don't hear that anymore with the antivenom. So what I just did about a month ago, I'm thinking, well, you know what? I put this yield data out to the poison control centers in Florida so they could just kind of have an idea of what to expect worst case. And you always get this question, does a snake ever run out of venom? What would happen if the snake bit me again? And, it's a salivary gland. So, it's never going to run dry, but it's definitely going to be a less in volume. So what I did is I took 50 snakes and I did 50 extractions from these 50 snakes. And it yielded the traditional about 2.5, 2.6 milliliters of venom, which is very typical, nothing out of the ordinary. And then I went right back on the same day within, hours and did them all again with a second bite. And this is no manual pressure on the glands. This is just a normal, let them bite. And when they bite the first time, they bite hard. You can see the glands, pressing, the muscles pressing down on the glands. And you can see, wow, they hang on and they bite. Well, when they come back on the second bite, it's about 30%. You get another 30% on the second bite. So that's considerable. And so anyway, that was just an interesting experiment. So going back to that, the whole purpose of the project was to produce the venom for the antivenom, but we took on these side things with some good research folks, and we've been able to help them with that. And we've learned a lot about the little guys. We've learned a lot about their metabolism. We've learned a lot about illnesses they get. They're pretty tough. I've had a couple with some parasites. Cleaned them up real easy with Panicure.
What were the parasites?
Pardon?
What were the parasites?
Mostly, there were some lungworms in them, and that at first I thought, oh boy, I got crypto, and because there was symptom of that, and I've tested them all. I've never had crypto. I've never had any virus, no, paramyxo or sunshine or anything like that. Never had them come in with ticks. Out of 15 years, I've had one coral snake come in with one tick out of the wild. So, wow. That was an unusual, and it was a big tick, and it was, hung. We've had quite a few come in out of golf courses that didn't make it, and looking upon opening them up and looking, most of their problems were liver, and I'm kind of assuming it was from probably a lot of the insecticides that they use, in the golf courses and stuff.
Sure.
But generally they're a tough little critter. But let me tell you, you can really puncture the esophagus and, going down real easy if you're not careful. And before you know it, you're in a lung. And now you're pumping food into the lung. So you just got to take your time. Tedious little thing. Nothing is tedious is doing spiders or scorpions or anything like that, but tedious.
Let me ask on going back to the lungworms. Were they a native? Do you know if they were a native species?
I don't know, because I use a state lab here, and while they're good, they're not really reptile oriented. It's just so cost prohibitive to send it up to Gainesville. That's where if I had a real major problem and I really want to know that's who I would send it to. But these folks here, they can do histology, and they can do parasites. They can do blood work. They'll do necropsy. They're pretty good at necropsy. But when they send all their viral stuff out, they don't even do the viral stuff there, because they're designed for agriculture. They're designed for horses, cows, sheep, goats, and that type of thing. But they've been great to work with, and they get the results back really quick. Excellent. Now, I have encountered one bacteria that I really fought with. Actually, these are with some the Sonoran and Arizona snakes, and it's a tough one. I've been using metronidazole on it. Um, it's the same bacteria that women get when they have like abortions. They get that shock syndrome.
Okay.
It's Clostridium. It's a Clostridium bacteria. You're familiar with C. diff?
Yeah.
Clostridium. Okay, this is not C. diff. It's Clostridium sordelli, and it has been renamed Paean Clostridium sordelli if in the reptile world. And I have fought that one. This lab's good at finding it. It is a normal bacteria, but for some reason it gets way high in counts, like really overrun, and the symptoms is regurgitation. And I can tell you, the coral snakes never get that. And I even had a case where I had moved some around, and I wanted to see how contagious it was, and put the coral snakes in the same aquariums that I had some snakes in there to just see if they, and in 6 months I never caught it. So I don't know. And you talk to most vets, and I can't find out too many people that have had much experience with it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's classic elapid, strong elapid immune systems, kind of like how people that have a lot of African stuff, the cobras are the only thing living because they could take whatever went through the room, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. So, I know they get crypto. I've read accounts on crypto and coming right out of the wild with it, but and that's pretty much a death sentence in our business. I know there's a treatment for it, but it doesn't work well. And there's some work being done out at in Kingsland at an institute out there. They're working on some crypto stuff now, and they may come up with something. I don't know.
Yeah, that crypto, man, that's a bulletproof little microorganism there. It's crazy.
Man, I'm telling you, it really is.
If I can
go ahead.
If I can jump back real quick, going back to the neonates that you were raising up, eventually at some point tonight, I want to kind of talk about some of the husbandry and maybe even some naturalistic stuff, because I know a lot of our listeners want to know as much as I do on that topic. But was there ever a thought or maybe an idea to do like frozen thawed neonate colubrids or some feeder snakes, if you will? Our good friend Henry, he's in the group chat. He says hello, by the way. He's keeps a lot of Ophiophagus snakes, and he's got freezers full of baby snakes, and him and I have had a lot of success with some of the South American stuff, getting it to tongue feed a frozen thawed corn or a stillborn king snake or what have you. I didn't know if you tried anything like that with some of the neonate fulvius.
The problem with the neonate fulvius is it's 6 or 7 inches long, and it weighs 4 grams. So what I got to get for that is probably neonate ringnecks.
Yeah.
Because even a neonate rat snake is too big for the neonate coral. Now, I wish I could find somebody that was breeding these blind snakes, because, I think those would be the ticket. Once they get up to that 12, 13 inch, then you actually, what you could do then is you could probably, feed them half of a juvenile corn. The diameter is not going to be the issue. It's mostly the length. And I tell you, I think you could scent, or you could make snake fillets and cut them to size, and you could probably get the neonates on that. And so if somebody wants to keep a neonate and do that, I think it's very doable and worth trying. I'd love to hear it. But with what we had to do, and because we already had the formula, we didn't go into that experimental husbandry stage. But there's something that could be done. I've got some now that are gravid, and I may give that a whirl now, because I can afford to experiment, and if it doesn't work out, I'm okay. I could not afford to lose these other ones, because it would have stopped the project on that ontogenetic study. And everybody, I've kept them in aspen. I've kept them. My humidity in the coral snake room, I never let it go below 55%. 70% is optimum. Is better. They shed much better like that. out of 75 snakes at 55, 60%, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, I'll have one that I'll have to soak overnight, in sphagnum moss wet. But for the most part, they do good. We find them here. They love the area around lake beds where it's moist, and I think because there's a lot of blind snakes and stuff there. But we're also, you can go down the road and catch them in the sandy pines. I mean, they come from all sorts of areas here, and they do well. And I'll tell you, Palm Beach, which is where I've gotten a lot of snakes out of, they are the prettiest. They just got a beautiful color to them. You're familiar? I know you live down there, don't you, Phil?
Yeah. I'm in southern Palm Beach.
Okay, Bush Wildlife Sanctuary. Remember that place?
It's still there.
When David was running that, he really helped me out. I was probably getting 5 or 6 corals a month from him that people were bringing in. Yeah.
Wow.
That really got us going good.
Well, I've been here 23 years and I've yet to find one on my own.
Really? No.
Yeah. Probably 2 or 3 times a year I get a phone call saying, "Hey, is this what I think it is? You want to come get it?" And sure as hell, somebody got one in a bucket. And I usually take it and try and keep it alive. And we all know the tragic state of that. But I've never found one on my own.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they're easy to keep and they're easy to breed. I run the lab at 84 degrees ambient, pretty much all year, except in the winter months for a couple months. I'll let the ambient go down to 60, 65. And there's a little bit of reduction in venom production for those couple, but that's okay. I think it's good for the animals to do a little cycle like that. But sure. I tried a couple of years at 86 and 87 degrees. That was too hot. Okay. That was actually too hot for the snake. I tell you, at 84 degrees ambient temperature with a 65% humidity range, they do well. I will tell you this: when I was keeping a few and feeding them corns, because I could get the corns and freeze them. I mean, you thaw them out and they'd eat them. They didn't do as well. After about 2 years, it was hard to keep weight on them with corn snakes. And they were eating 2 and 3 corn snakes a month. I mean, it's not like you just feed, so I don't know if it wasn't enough. We did fecals on those guys and there was no problem with that. So I don't know. And I've had other people that have gotten them, and bigger ones, 24, 30 inches, they keep them. They're doing fine. And then in about a year and a half, they die. Wow. And I've not been able to get them and do a necropsy. I mean, a necropsy on that snake at labs, it's $220.
Wow. Yeah.
Do
you think that the corn snake diet is not enough in terms of frequency from a high metabolism?
I don't know. I think there's something with a high metabolism that's happening here. Yeah. I had a friend that had a really big one, almost as big as the one I got. It was over 40 inches. And that thing did well for a couple of years. It ate and it maintained weight, and boom, dead. Just died on it. Don't know why.
Wow.
I do have one that's 49. I can get him 48 and a half without stretching him. I really think he'll go 49. And unfortunately, to get him in the record book at University of Florida up here in Gainesville, he's got to die. And then I can take it up there. And they told me if I could get some type of picture where they can measure it by the pixels, that I might be able to enter it that way. But I've yet to find anybody with that type of camera set up.
Well, hopefully it's a long time before you do that.
Yeah, but I tell you, she's been here since 2011, and she was 41 when I got her.
Wow.
And so she's old, man. I have no idea how old that snake is, but I would say she could be 15 plus years old.
Excellent. Absolutely.
That's awesome. What's so awesome about this species is that it's right here in our own backyard, or at least us here in the Southeast, and there's so much we don't know about them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons. That's one of my. It is probably my favorite venomous species that we have here. Bar none. And it's for that reason. Like, we see them all the time. There's all this sort of lore and mysticism about them, I guess. And,
Yeah, you know what? They're a really misunderstood little snake. They are the gentlest elapid you could come across. I mean, I don't recommend this, but they don't want to bite you. They absolutely do not want to bite you, and you have got to work hard to get bitten by a coral snake. Now, if you step on one barefoot or with a flip flop, or you restrain it, or you pinch it, okay, you're going to get bitten. But just generally speaking, that they don't ever strike. You know, they'll go into their little flipping around when they get excited, and if you just back off and leave them alone for a little bit, and then go back and move or whatever you're going to do, they'll calm down. They're really a great little animal as far as being inoffensive. So But you know, animals grab them, dogs, cats. Strangely enough, I've only seen about a dozen coral snake bites on dogs and cats. And on every one of those bites that I was involved with, the first thing we saw was back leg paralysis first.
Ooh.
Not diaphragm, nothing that I could see, you know, with a bulbar paralysis with any type of eyelids activity. But one, they start dragging one leg, and then all of a sudden they drag two legs. So here the animals, the rear end's paralyzed, and then once it hits the diaphragm, it's too late. But also some of those we got in and did get antivenom, and they made it. And that's another thing. The cost of the antivenom is ridiculously expensive. The Wyeth, the Pfizer Wyeth right now is selling to the hospital organizations for 7,000 plus a bottle. So working with, yeah, it was 5,500 when it started, but it's like everything else.
And that's to the hospital. That's not to us.
That's not to us. Hospitals will mark that up 2 or 3 times. I mean, going up to 15, 20 a vial on a bill is not out of the question.
Wow.
They don't ever get paid that, but you know, that's the way they bill it. But Venom Vet, who makes a North American Crotalidae, you know, pit viper antivenom, Walter Escobar is working with some folks in Costa Rica. And we donated a little bit of venom for them to get started on researching how they are going to try to produce a North American veterinary coral snake antivenom. And they have filed for USDA approval as we speak. And hopefully in July or August, they may get something back on that. So that would put that antivenom in the veterinary world at a reasonable rate, I think.
And that's interesting you mentioned that.
Anyway.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a friend whose wife is a vet, and she was telling me that, you know, Crofab for humans cost is what, $1,500, $2,000, and then the hospital charges more, right? But Crofab for a pet, a dog or a cat, is like $300.
Well, you can't. Crofab's not made for a pet. So
okay, because she showed me the invoices from her vet clinic, and it's like the full scientific name of Crofab, right? And it's like $300 US.
Okay, here's what we perceive that's going on there. They're getting expired Crofab, and so they're selling it at a rate that's reasonable. However, they're making people sign releases. Just like right now, you can get some of the old Wyeth that's 10 years expired and use it for a veterinary, and some vets can get that, and you have to sign a release. Antivenom works forever if it's been kept reasonably cool and in a good spot. We have used antivenom on people 15 and 20 years old with some African stuff for mamba, and it worked fine. And it was nasty. It was so bad when you shook it up, you could see all kinds of particles floating around it. You know, it was, nice. but it worked. It still had enormous amount of neutralization ability in it. So this Crofab you're seeing to be used like that is going to be very effective. I don't know where that sits in the realm of FDA versus USDA or what, right. But yeah, it's. People think that you can't use human antivenoms on animals, which, you know, that's absolutely not true. I will tell you an interesting thing back to, while we've done a lot of work with geographic variation, we also have done that with water moccasins and diamondbacks. And, the diamondback, the eastern diamondback here in Florida, is very geographically variant. Basically, north of the Swanee River, it has a small basic peptide, a myotoxin in it that's pretty rough. And BTG makes a good effort to include that venom from the northern range into their process, so that's covered. But we've been looking at over on the west coast of Florida, in north of Crystal River, and in Levy County, up to Levy County, and we've had 3 water moccasin bites there in the last couple of years where we were having a lot of trouble getting the swelling under control.
Really?
They were mild bites, mild bites, and they all ended up good. So we're now looking at that venom from that county to see if there's an ontogenetic variant in these smaller snakes. And let me tell you, I think you've all heard about getting bitten by a rattlesnake or a water moccasin here or pygmy, that there's all kinds of blood thinning problems. It's called thrombocytopenia, where the platelets drop low, recurrent coagulopathy. The antivenom's given, it gets it under control, and then if they don't give enough antivenom to get initial control of the bite, it will come back. Well, while you're going through all of these processes, the problem has always been the blood's too thin. The blood's too thin. It's dangerously thin. You're going to bleed out. That's always been the focus. Well, what we saw with a small water moccasin bite happened to a friend, actually. A friend's son, is his platelets never got to a dangerous low. His labs were just a little bit off, and he got enough antivenom, and he swelled and he was in pain. And of course, the best thing you can do for a bite from a crotalidae here is elevate it. I mean, elevate it up, not a few inches, like 45 degrees. So they elevated it. However, unbeknownst to anybody, they're keeping the kid in bed and they're not letting him get up and move around. So going through this period of a mild bite, when normally this venom is like taking a blood thinner, he didn't have that issue. He developed a damn pulmonary embolism and ended up in ICU. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a rarity, but that's something that you might want to keep that in the forefront of your mind. If you know of anybody get bit and it's a mild bite and they're doing okay, if you're on a hand, if it's a hand, you get up, go to the bathroom, move around. But if it's a foot, you can't put pressure on it. Even if you just get up on crutches and move 3 or 4 times a day, move around. Don't sit in that bed for 3 or 4 days without getting out. Otherwise, that could be an unusual circumstance, unusual condition that can set in.
Well, what's the concept behind having it raised like that instead of?
The concept behind raising it is you want to get venom will pool in a location,
right?
And it can, you've got the antivenom in your system, and of course your kidneys is removing it, and they remove crofab really fast because it's a small, it's a small molecule, it's a small antibody compared to the other ones. So you can put the antivenom in, and you can. Renal system, you can urinate it out before this venom is making its way and getting absorbed and getting circulated. So by keeping it elevated, 2 things: that venom's moving where it should be, so it can meet up with the antivenom, get neutralized, and elevation reduces the swelling drastically. Okay, and and all of that. Plus moving the venom out and getting it neutralized. Now your local necrosis and your local damage is less. It's just, I really believe in elevation.
Well, I know that's something Spencer Green has really pushed the last handful of years, seeing his responses in the snake bite groups and stuff like that.
Yeah, Spencer's great. I mean, he's treated hundreds and hundreds of bites. A lot of not water moccasin, copperhead. Copperhead seems to be the main Texas biter out there, and he gets other stuff too. He gets corals and he gets rattlesnakes, but a lot of copperheads.
Yeah, it's funny. I recently, over the past couple of years, saw someone in East in East Africa that had a puff adder bite where they were told, don't wrap it, you'll get compartmental syndrome, blah, 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 blah. And that pooling took effect, and it wound up making independent blisters of necrosis where the bite site itself was perfectly fine, but a little patch right here. Just because they're just sitting there with their arm not moving, and it just settles. So that makes a ton of sense what you're saying, sir.
Yeah. We're very fortunate here in the United States. Some of these other countries, they got their hands full. They can't get the antivenom, and when they do, they can't get it to the people. There's a new oral and intravenous drug being looked at, Varusplativ. Have you heard about that? It's a PLA2 inhibitor, and all venoms have PLA2s in them.
Is this the zinc-based one?
Pardon?
Is this the zinc-based one?
No, it's not zinc-based.
Okay.
No, this drug was made and was FDA approved for another disease, a rare disease, 25 years ago. And Dr. Matt Lewin with Ophorex, has come along, and he is redeploying this as a snake bite, not a cure, not an antivenom replacement. But what it can do is you can carry it with you. It's inexpensive. And you can take it in the middle of nowhere, and it can give you maybe a day or two to get in with a really bad mamba bite or pup bite to get the antivenom. And it's in phase 2 clinical trials right now. And I guess what they're trying to really figure out is how many hours will this be effective? Will it be effective 10, 12, 20, 30, 40? When I first heard about it, I was excited because I'm thinking, wow, you get bit by a coral snake, you pop 2 of these, you're good. But I didn't realize that while it stops that PLA2 we talked about, that presynaptic from binding and shutting down your diaphragm, it stays in there. It doesn't neutralize it. It just makes it where it can't do its job. But after a period of hours, then it can do its job. So by then you have to have antivenom. So it's not an antivenom replacement. It's in addition to it, and it'll save hundreds of thousands of people in Asia and Africa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is going to be the most monumental thing I think that I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, that'd make a huge difference, because you hear about these third world countries where they're hours and miles away from anything remotely close to modern medicine, and I know there's been stories of people that hadn't even made it, people dying on the backs of bikes on their way to the hospital. And if you have something that can buy them more time like that, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Did you want to talk anything about the King Cobra Conservancy?
Absolutely.
Well, the KCC, I think most people are familiar with it now. It's a small organization which was started by Naya Haas, which is Bill Haas' daughter, and the whole purpose of it was to bring awareness and try to save the king, because it's a big animal, and we don't want to see it go extinct. So she put together a bunch of alumni, myself, Ron Whitaker, Joe Wazalewski, George Van Horn, that worked at the Serpentarium. And her sister Shanti is involved, and her cousin Michelle Haas is involved, and her granddaughter Talia. And so we all got together to form this group, and it's a 501c3. It's a nonprofit corp. And the whole purpose of it is to see what we can do to help the king. So, of course, Ram, who lives over there, has been a great asset for us. And we have funded a bunch of projects over there to basically do this, to relocate them and educate the people in the townships and the little villages so they don't kill them and chop them up. Very few people get bitten by king cobras. Very few. It's another misunderstood animal. It will not try to bite you. If you leave it alone, it'll go away. And then we equip them with education material. We've done radio tracking where we put transmitters in them. So we do all that through the Madras Croc Bank. And now we're working with Madras is doing some snake bite initiatives, because now we're seeing that there's geographic variation with the king cobra between India and Thailand and China. In fact, there's a paper out. The king cobra has now been split up into 4 separate species. So the venom's different too. But anyway, we struggle to make ends meet. We're probably one of the few organizations that 98% of the money goes where it needs to. We don't pay for anything other than expenses that it costs, the bare minimum to run the operation. Nobody gets paid for their time. It's all volunteer. And it's on Facebook. Anybody wants to look at it and learn about kings and seeing videos and seeing the projects, www.thekingcobra.org. It's a good place to see what that's all about. And that's been a good little project. And Naya is now president, Joe is vice president, and myself and Ram and Rajir are on the board, the voting board. And then we have other committees that help out and do stuff. But it's very hard to get an organization like that running when you're not paying people. It's all volunteer, and a lot of these guys are very busy scientists. So we're all having to do what we can and pitch in, in our spare time. But it's still going, and we're making a difference. I think that one project, the King Cobra Ecology Conservation Project, one year I think we relocated like 128 king cobras, and that Ajay Giri over there. He runs that operation. We were able to buy him, transportation, buy him anti-venom, buy him the equipment that they need. Man, $10,000 in India is like having $100,000 bucks here. It goes a long way. You can get a lot accomplished. So anyway, that's the status of that deal there.
Sounds like another raffle to me, Phil.
Absolutely.
We did one for ASF last year, and it was
You see this ASF? I'll tell you what, they're great. They're great.
We're very big fans.
Yeah, they have put together, and BTG helped fund the building their clinic over there. They're making that's what making a difference looks like. Nick Brandenhoff and that group, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, and we had Brent from Venom Life Gear on a while back, and he was explaining to us just how far the American dollar goes with that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of where there's a big disconnect for a lot of those nonprofits and things like that. Is like you don't realize how much something like $20, $30, $50, end up makes such a huge difference in it.
Yeah, I mean, even if people donate $1 or $5, or buy a T-shirt, that we make a bunch of our money on our T-shirts and stuff, and we've had a couple grants kick in. We've had a lot of zoos have also donated, but most of our money is coming from just the general folks out there, that look and see and want to help.
Well, sorry, I had to step away for a second, and I had to switch my hat. The other hat just wasn't.
Hey, I like your hat.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I got this hat. You, of course, pleasure's all mine. You guys had on National Snake Day, I think last year, you guys had a big fundraiser thing, and I donated to that, and I got the hat. So
yeah, great. All right. Well, what else? What else you got? What have we left out?
Did you want to mention? I know. So Phil, this is kind of a touchy subject with the whole FWC thing, but I never even considered the effect it has on venom production facilities.
Well, let me tell you, I wrote all of our commissioners a letter, and this is the way I try to explain it with making it just simple understanding. I laid out a pyramid structure, okay, and if you envision in your mind a pyramid with a very big base, a foundation of this pyramid is a private collector and the commercial breeders. The people that are licensed are her people. Okay, all of those people going up to the pyramid, the next people in line are the 3 venom labs in Florida. They support us. Okay, and what do we support? We produce venom for pharmaceutical companies, for research, for colleges, for all kinds of other organizations that are doing not just anti-venom work, cancer research, Wegovy, all of these diabetic medicines, they're all derived from snake bite. It's not only all the cardiac and the blood thinners and the clot busters, and you go into a emergency room with a heart attack and they give you the clot buster to save your life. That's a derivative of snake venom. So we got all of this going up in a pyramid, and then it funnels up to the very top. And guess who's at the very top? The American person, the family, the you, the me, the people. They all benefit from all of this. So when you have this problem where the FWC is trying to take out the foundation, that's going to affect every person here down the road. Not to mention all of the young minds coming up that go through this and end up in toxinology and end up in medicine and end up in research. All of that gets taken away in Florida. Initially, the drive was to stop this because of safety. And then when we proved in 2016 that it's not a safety issue, that we can be escape-proof rooms, we can do this, that. Okay, well now the whole reason for this is because the exotic problem. And there is an exotic problem. I mean, my gosh, Phil, we got a problem. But getting rid of or making life on the 300 or 400 licensed people and driving them out of the state so they can go somewhere else to do their passion or their business, all that's going to do is fuel the black market. The black market's going to stay here. And what does a drug dealer do when the cops are outside and he's got 10 pounds of cocaine? He flushes it down the toilet before they come in the front door if he knows
exactly.
What do you think all these black market snake people are going to let all the snake go? They're not going to kill them or put them in a garbage can. They'll let them go.
Yeah.
So my whole push was, let's look at the unintended consequences of what we're doing. We all realize we have a problem, and let's work together to try to fix it. And I will tell you that after the last commission meeting, the FWC backed up a little bit, and I got to give the commissioners credit. They said, okay, we're going to restudy this more. We're not going to accept all this. We're not going to make it law. So we're in that middle mode now where I'm hoping something will come of that. But in the meantime, you've got Senator Rubio down there now putting in federal laws that's adding some teeth to the Lacey Act. I don't know how that's going to affect us. Thank God we got USARC out there that understands and trying to get in front of this. And of course, the only way USARC are going to be successful is they can afford to hire the attorneys to fight the battle. So,
right.
I don't know if we're going to win this. I think we can delay it, but it's definitely. I mean, Smitty, you're pretty free up there where you are, right? As far as laws and licenses and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in South Carolina, so they recently did, within the last 2 or 3 years, restrictions on native stuff and selling it. But it's size regulations. There's no all-out bans on anything, except I think tegus maybe I think are officially a no-go. But
yeah. Well, I don't know where that's headed, but it's here to stay. And I just hope if we can get the Fish and Game working with the shareholders, and everybody that's involved in this, and of course, if we on our side, or that little massacre that happened, I wrote this letter long before that. That was 10 ways, just a big screw up. That should never have happened. That was horrible. And maybe that had some effect. Maybe that's what caused them to back up and say, I don't know, so maybe some good came of that. I don't know. But going forward, we got to get better. We got to get better at it.
Yeah. Agreed. And I feel like just touching on the venomous in Florida specifically, every few years, they just make it more strict and more strict and more strict. And the restrictions that they're putting on us, for the most part, guys like you and me, it's stuff we've been doing forever. You know what I mean? Right. Escape-proof rooms, sealing things, locked enclosures, bite protocol, label. We've all, the people that are really into this for the passion, for the love, for the business, whatever it may be, we've already been doing it. It's the
doing it right.
Doing it right. It's the fly-by-night yahoos. But the problem is that when I got my license in 2005, right? Yeah, maybe 2005. There was right around 480 license holders in the state. Now there's less than 150.
Really? It's down that low?
Yeah, for the state of actual license holders, there's way more than that in terms of keepers. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
And it's and I imagine this is purely anecdotal. I'm speculating everything. I imagine the majority of it is native stuff. Herpers who said, I'll keep a pygmy for a little while. No one will know, that kind of thing. Do I condone that? No. Do I think it's asinine that they should go through all these rigmaroles for something like that? Or, excuse me, 1,000 hands-on hours for Gila monsters? Come on. You know what I mean? But I feel like we need to stay the course, and we need to keep doing what you're doing and keep promoting the safety, and keep promoting the good handling, the good keeping of it, so that it doesn't slip away as so many other things have.
Right. I mean, they have actually told us we don't have you're going to be fine. Well, no, we're not going to be fine. If you take away this foundation, you take away and you run all the keepers out of Florida. I mean, I can't go to another state and produce coral snake milk. Okay.
Right.
I need the people here. But I can't get that across. That it's like a brick wall. I guarantee you, I never even got a response from any of them back on the letter. Hey, I got your letter, blah, blah, blah. I did write the governor, and of course, what he said was, we have your letter, we forwarded to the Fish and Game Commission.
Of course.
So, well, but anyway,
I sent multiple letters to Rubio back when he first started this Lacey-Act nonsense.
And did you get anywhere with it?
So there was like a window that was an open forum, a digital forum. There was like a window of like 20 days or whatever. So I sent one at the beginning, and then I sent one at the end, and I didn't get a response back for probably 90 days. And it was a generic template from his office saying, we've received your letter. Marco feels so strongly about the people in his beloved state, blah, 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 template. So I trashed it. What are you going to do?
Yeah. What are you going to do? Yeah.
Did my due diligence to the best I could,
I was really hopeful that he was sort of, years ago when he was running, I was like, okay, he seems pretty level-headed. He's younger, he's, whatever, but
right.
And he's even when cigar legislation has come through, Rubio was there, opposing it and stuff like that. And so I'm like, I see this kind of stuff, and I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, you already know sort of what we're talking about, where we're coming from.
Yeah, I feel like it's super left field for his style. You know what I mean? Like, and it makes you wonder, where's the secret agenda? Where's the underlining clause? You know what I mean? Like, why all of a sudden Republican who's pro blue collar? Like, where did this come from?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I really thought DeSantis would step up and maybe try to take a look at what this is going to do to the business end of, the reptile. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar business here in Florida.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not just the snakes; it's everything that goes into keeping them. It's all apparatus, and he's been a high talker on small business, but somebody got to him with the exotic thing and how it's damaging Florida. And they've it's a simple fix. We just stop this stuff from coming in, and that's where that's going to be a tough fight.
It worked great for heroin and fentanyl and all that other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Well, hey man, we got rid of Flocka real quick in Broward. They sent dudes over to Beijing and they nipped that thing right in the bud. But yeah, I think that I'm with you, and I feel like if the governor knew how much small business was tied to this in terms of the feeder breeders, everything from the ratters who are supplying our rodents for our hobby, and the ratters that are supplying the rodents for the pharmaceutical industry, the bug producers, the cage makers, the grapevine cutters, or whatever you want to call them, everything. And it's just, they're more concerned with iguanas crapping on their dock. It just doesn't make sense. So, but I'm hopeful. I'm trying to stay glass half full. So, now let me ask you, if we can slip back into corals for a hot second. So I keep a small group of Atractaspis. and I'm trying to keep them stiletto snakes. I'm trying to keep them as naturalistic as possible. And the only other person I know personally that keeps them is Nathaniel. But Nathaniel, as amazingly helpful as he's been my Sherpa on this trip. He keeps them in sterile conditions because he wants to keep their face clean for milking. And I was going to ask you, you had mentioned that with the Fulvius, you've kept them on cypress and aspen, and you're soaking them in sphagnum if they got a bad shed. Do you see a similar issue with having their faces stay clean, or is it completely different because they're not stabbing like the stilettos, they're actually biting the vessel?
No, I don't keep them in any kind of substrate that's like a dust, like some of these corn, the dusty stuff, like actual sand. And of course with a stiletto, with a coral, if it was that way and I got it out of that habitat or out of that bedding, I could, while I have it, I can wipe the face off, but he can't do that with a stiletto.
Right.
but I've used aspen, I've used all types of cypress mulch, and I've mixed them all together. I've used all the beddings you can buy that you soak and it unexpands, the coconut husk. And, and there's several grades of aspen too. The one that works the best is just, I sneeze, it's full of dust. But it works the best.
The good cheap stuff.
The good cheap stuff. But what do you keep that in? What's the substrate you're keeping it in?
So with the stilettos, I've got a jungle mix, which is fir bark, peat, spag, with some cypress. Good. And then I've got some leaf litter in there. And I wasn't even so much concerned with how I'm keeping the stilettos. It was more so, there's a lot of people listening who can legally and legitimately want to keep a coral. What would you recommend to them as far as a substrate and the depth of the substrate? And have you kept a lot of them naturalistic?
Yes, I've kept them in everything in the jungle mix. The jungle mix is good.
Yeah.
What the best way I kept them when I was feeding them naturally is I would get not cypress mulch, but it's called No Float. It is cypress mulch. No Float at Home Depot.
Okay.
But I would mix that up with sphagnum moss that I also bought at Home Depot. And of course, the No Float says no insecticides and all that.
Right.
But I will tell you, all of that stuff it has bugs. It's got beetles. It's got these other things that won't harm the snake, but you don't want these beetles going from cage to cage either. I mean, I got some kind of moth going in the lab now that I'm having a hard time getting rid of these tiny little moths that came in.
The little pale colored ones.
Yes.
Oh, everywhere.
I mean, everywhere. So the jungle, I would use a jungle mix on a coral, and I would keep maybe one corner of it. Put some sphagnum moss in that corner and keep that a little higher, a little moister, not wet. Just maybe every couple of days hit it with a mister. That's all. They don't need a light. They don't need a heat lamp. What these guys do is they love to burrow in out. And if you put, I just use like pavers, a piece of paver stone. And I'll set it on top of the loose stuff, and they will work a little thing under there, and they'll stay under there. They come and go. They like to be tight, my big one, I do have a hide rock, and it loves it. It goes in there because it fills it up, and that's its hiding spot. But they need a hiding spot. They need the humidity. They are drinkers. They drink all the time. I mean, you have got to keep plenty of water for them. And, they can't go like a crotolid, man. You don't ever want that water to go dry for 3 or 4 days.
Now that you mention that, that's really interesting because we had one at the nature center that was my first job. We had a coral there. And now that I think about it, that thing was at that water bowl all the time.
Yes, actually, Harvey Lillywhite, a professor up in Gainesville, did a study on, he took 10 of them and he had his students stay up 24 hours watching these snakes on shifts, and they were weighing them, at certain periods before they drank it. And he came up and when I looked at all of his data, I'm thinking a key to good venom production with a coral snake, they got to have a lot of water, and I keep it fresh all the time. Because the more water they drink, and that might be some of the problem why some of these other ones died. I mean, he actually said some of those guys were drinking like 5 and 6 times a day.
Wow.
Now they may not drink a lot of volume, but they're in there and they're drinking. So that's very important with corals. They got to have plenty of water. It's not just humidity, and that 80, they can drop down, you know, at night very comfortably. If you keep them in an air conditioned house, you're going to fight the humidity thing.
Yeah.
Because you know that air. Yeah. So, but if you do that, don't have an open top. You know, if it's in an aquarium or something, maybe just leave a fourth of it open and put something over to hold some of that humidity in there.
Sure.
And now the other thing too is if you spill the water and it gets in that mulch and it gets a little mildewy, just pick that out, clean that out, and keep that out.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
there.
Have you ever noticed?
They're not super hard to keep.
Have you noticed any kind of, I don't want to say water blisters or a skin issue from too much humidity?
No.
Wow.
I have even, what I do is I got a couple of trays that I fill up with the sphagnum moss, and I wet it till it's wringing wet, and there's actually maybe 1/8 of an inch of water in the bottom, and I put a bit of big flat rock in there, and I give them a water bowl. And if I go through and they're having trouble shedding, I'll put them in there, and I have left those guys in that wet water for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mistake. No water blister, no nothing.
Wow. Excellent.
No.
It's a testament to how awesome they are.
Yeah. Very few skin issues with those guys. The big problem you'll have if make sure you keep the eye caps off of them, like with a lot of elapids, because if the eye caps build up and the nasal builds up, it's not good.
Are they photosensitive like crates?
Well, let me tell you this. You don't want to go out and do coral snakes at 10 o'clock at night. They have a little personality change when it gets dark. They are more they're more agitated. I don't know what it is. Frankly, if you do them at night, you probably get more venom because they're going to be biting, giving it all they got. Yeah. They get lethargic. They go into a relaxation during the day. Because I do have a light cycle in a lab, you know, and I change it. So yeah, I would say they are photosensitive.
Because that's always been my thing. Is I always thought that if I was going to find some, because the island I live on has one of the biggest populations of corals in the state, but I haven't seen a live one in years. I see them on the road, flat as a pancake, on a regular basis. And I always thought that if I was going to see them, it would have to be, you know, right after dark, around dark. But anytime my neighbors send me pictures of them in their yard, which is pretty regularly, it's usually late morning before noon. And
late morning, late evening is when we get most of the calls. We do get them middle of the day too, but I'd say 80% of the spottings are early morning walkers or late evening. You know, when it's cooled off. But I will tell you, if you go out in the lab right now in the dark and you shine a light on the racks that are clear, they're moving. They're moving at night. I don't know if they move all night, but they do a lot of moving at night. And during the day, you go in there and you open it up, they're not moving. They're hiding.
Have you noticed any movement in correlation to, like, around me? Like I said, I've never found one before, but if it rains, you're almost guaranteed to find scarlet snakes.
Yes.
And I imagine it'd be very similar. Like the rain comes, it stops. Now everything is coated in moisture. The earthworms start coming out. I imagine that. Okay.
I think they're very active in a wet rain, not in the middle of the day, but yeah, I think that would. And the other thing is too, you know, the best luck I've had breeding is I put them together like in March and April. And I would say that probably in the breeding season, the males they're gonna be moving a lot more. And the big chunkos that we get are mostly female. The females are the bigger ones. And I'll tell you another observation that I had with this colony of 50 plus. Last year, like 10 of them all got gravid with infertile eggs. Never been with another snake since 2012.
Wow. Are these siblings or no?
No, these are ones that came in out of the wild.
Oh,
but
wow.
most of them were here. They've been here for like since 2012 without being paired up.
Wow.
Well, I did them today, and I only got through half of them today. And out of the 25 or 30 snakes, 10 look gravid.
Wow.
So, and let me tell you, this is not a good thing, because when they have the eggs, it takes me, if I get a coral snake that comes in here, it's a little thin, within 3 or 4 months, I can put weight back and get it back up. But when that female lays those eggs, it takes 6 or 7 months to get her weight back up.
Wow.
It really takes a lot out of them. And so, you know, I talked to Gordon Shewitt about this, and because he does a lot of this stuff, and he said, he said, what I would guess is these snakes are getting at the end of their lifespan, and they're trying to procreate themselves. So they're going into this mode. So it'll be interesting to see if it's all infertile again, or if I get any fertile eggs. So that long of being, with no mate. I don't know.
Yeah, we noticed that with a lot of North American colubrids, specifically Lamprepeltis, where you have a zoo animal that has never seen another snake for 15, 18 years, and all of a sudden it gets gravid with a bunch of obviously infertile eggs, and everyone wants to jump to it's parthenogenesis, they're going to be fertile, and then something happens and it scatters the eggs across the enclosure. God forbid they have to be removed manually by the vet, and they're all infertile, they're all duds, but it's like this
biologic Hail Mary.
It's like the Alamo, I'm at my end, here's the Hail Mary.
Now George has had water moccasins that were born here and never paired, have babies, and they lived.
Oh wow.
Not many, they wouldn't big clutch, but so there's some parthenogenesis going on there from
sure.
We know it's never been bred.
Wow. That's awesome.
Do you notice any correlation in terms of population density with things like legless lizards or tantilla or even Storaria?
The only population density that I've experienced is there was an area up in Leesburg, and it was it's like a camp, if you will, a school type rehab organization where they have a bunch of cottages and motel strips, rooms,
like a Boy Scout camp.
Well, no, it's sort of like a rehab for people that have had a tough time in life, and they go there and they work, but they live there.
Okay.
And all of these little living units are small, and they all have the air conditioner. And at the back of all the air conditioners, where the water's coming off the drain, there was a lot of ringnecks and blind snakes. And that was a coral snake production place. That guy was calling me about 10 times a year with snakes. And I said, where are you getting them? He said, we'll always find them around the air conditioners. They're all right. And so I went back there, and he said, and we have a lot of little black ones too. I said, what do you mean little black ones? They have this orange ring around their neck. So where the food and the humidity is, that's the only time I could correlate a lot of them. I think that's why I think we have a couple lakes around here, and these people live on these lakes, a lot of oak trees, and you look around, there's just tons and tons of not acres, but large areas of rotten composting oak trees and limbs and leaves. This coral snake heaven.
Wow.
I'll bet you if I went over there with a rake and just wanted to start turning that stuff over, one guy over there, 1 year I got 4 or 5 out of there in about a 4 or 5 month period.
Wow.
And then he moved, but he worked in the yard a lot. And that's the key too, unless you have somebody that's aware of their surroundings and staying out, being out, that most people don't ever see them. Now, I will tell you another bizarre thing. This guy called me and he said, I've got this coral snake. And he said, I got it in a bucket. Will you come get it? So I went down there, and it was a female. And he said, well, you know, there's another one around here. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'm going to take this same bucket and turn it over sideways and see if I can catch it. And I'm thinking, okay. The next day he called me, and I went down there and got a male. So that's the first time I've ever gotten 2 coral snakes out of this. This guy lived on about a 3-acre tract, and he was back up to a big pond, a lot of oak and shade in the same condition I just told you about. So that was just, you know, never ever do I go back to many places other than the one I just told you about with all the little air conditioned things and this guy. Most of the other people, they call you once and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know. I ask about the population density thing because in the 4 years that we've been living in this house, I've seen more legless lizards than I've probably ever seen in my life. Tantilla are really common. And it also happens that in this like particular neighborhood that I'm in, you know, that's my neighbors around the corner are seeing a ton of corals and stuff. And so I'm wondering if there's sort of a direct correlation there.
I think there could be. I don't know that, but I really think there could be, yes. With what I've seen around the lake beds and this other deal, I think if they've got enough, and let me tell you, what happened up there is every year they got smaller and smaller. And so when they got to be, they're calling me with 12, 4, I'm telling them, let them go. And the good thing about that guy, he lets them go because I helped them out a little bit. You know, you can't buy them, but, you know, I can help them with they have cookouts for their kids and stuff. And, you know, we make a little donation to help that. And then he helps me in return. So
Sure.
Yeah. My neighbors are terrified of these things.
Oh.
And it's verified sightings. Like they send me pictures, and because normally when someone says they see a coral snake, I'm like, no, you didn't. But they send me pictures, and it is 110% corals.
Try to work on them and explain to them how, you know, innocuous they are and how gentle they are, and unless they step on it barefoot or in a flip flop or they pick it up, they're not going to get bit. Yeah. I've gone out and gotten coral snakes from kids. They brought them in the house and put them in the aquarium, told their parents they were rat snakes. And kids keeping a coral snake. You go over there, he's got this coral snake, 2-foot coral snake. He just handling it like it's a boa or a red rat. Wow. I mean, they just don't want to bite you. They want to bite the venom guy because he's grabbing them.
Right,
of course. But they're just, and I'm speaking from thousands of encounters, not 10.
Right.
Thousands. Right. This is thousands, you know, probably over 10,000. And I can tell you that, you know, my 2 partners, both George and Carl, will tell you the same thing. And they've done as many or more than me. And they don't ever have a problem with them either. They're just very gentle.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to what you're saying about the guy with the air conditioner who had the all black or melanistic or whatever you want to call it, do you run into a lot of aberrantly patterned stuff or melanistic stuff?
No. Those snakes that he was describing are ringnecks.
Oh,
the food source. No, I have never come across or had a melanistic or any oddball coral snake in here.
Yeah, because I people send me all the time. They're in the different herp ID groups and stuff, and you see a lot of the same snake picture floating around. Yes, very unique with the crazy aberrant pattern with the blotches. But I feel like more and more, maybe it's because we have cell phones, supercomputers in our pocket, and people are snapping it more often. But I feel like we're seeing more aberrant pattern stuff.
Now the pattern changes that I see are the width of the bands can be different. Yeah. And then and also the colors can be very brilliant or very faded. And also you can have a lot of black in the red. You know, every scale in the red can have a black dot on it. Yeah, I've seen a few. I've got one right now where the band doesn't go all the way around the belly. One band has a big circle in it, missing color.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'll tell you another interesting thing. I had one come in and it had a pretty bad gash on it. So I went ahead and sewed it up and he did fine and he healed up, and that scar had no color. And in about 2 years, that scar those colors came back in the scar.
Wow.
Yeah, the color got pigment and the right color, the right color.
That's incredible.
The big one I've got, the female, the 49-incher, she came in with a weed eater and all cut up. I had to take a couple ribs out and trim it out. So she's got a scar on her, but it's more on the belly. It's not, and the color never came back on her.
Wow.
So I don't know. I can't explain that.
Very cool.
Do you have particular animals in your group that are considerably more untrustworthy than others?
I have a couple of corals that are they're like a squirrel on crack. They're crazy, and I don't know if it's a neurological dysfunction, but as soon as you touch them, you can be gentle and you can try to get them out. They just flip and go berserk. They're so bad that I've considered either releasing them or continue to keep doing them in a tube. And what I do with those guys is I put them on a kitchen table, and I have a tube behind a piece of wood that's along a back ledge that's got a little wooden wall, and I coax them into the clear tube, and then I grab them that way, and then I back them out of the tube, because you can't grab those guys like you. They're just, and it's almost like they got a neurological problem. Spastic would be a good explanation or a good description. They're just spastic.
Do you think it's something to do with like a stress-induced seizure, maybe, or is it just defensive?
I don't know. They were that way when they came in, and they've never changed. Okay. Now, and also I will tell you that every now and again one will overbite on the flask, and the fang that goes in the dam material will eject venom. The other one won't. And here's something that I can't explain. Now, keep in mind, we have gone from periods where I've had 100, 120, doing them every 5 days in the early months and we lost a lot. But if you want to take right now about a 20-day, 21-day average of doing maybe 75 total, that goes from 50 to 100. Doing this about 3 or 4 times a year, I'll have a coral snake that loses its fangs, and it's not associated with a shed cycle. It bites a vial, slide right off. There's
nothing
no
there.
fangs. And it didn't just shed, it's not going in the shed. And then the next time around, boom, they're there. So I don't know if you would think if it was prevalent and there was a period in time where they were shedding, where there was a few days where they didn't drop the other ones down, I would see it more than that, but I don't. And George and Carl have experienced something similar to that too. We've all three seen that this, and we don't know what it's about.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they have so much use per tooth, and like the tooth got dull, so the kitchen knife got dull, so instead of sharpening it, you just throw away and pop out another kitchen knife.
Yeah. The other thing is the vial we use is a 50 milliliter plastic centrifuge tube. It's plastic, and there's been on occasion where I've had them bite the side of the vial, and those fangs are so sharp they impale the plastic.
Oh,
wow.
They don't slide off. They boom. They can nail that plastic. So they're very sharp little fangs. They're just very, very short. Any clothing is going to probably give you about 90% protection, and any kind of clothing. Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting.
Make sure I'm wearing my pantyhose next time then.
Of the majority of bites that had a lot of backstory to them, a lot of verifiable backstory, were they legitimate punctures, or was it more of a scratch like a mamba bite?
No, it's punctures, because what happens with after that bite, after an hour or two, you almost can't see the puncture.
Oh wow!
It's that small. It doesn't get red. It doesn't get black. It doesn't show up. The babies. The babies were a learning experience. I did have a couple of accidents early on with those guys, because if you hold them too tight while you're pushing down the tube, you'll kill them. So you really got to almost not have any pressure on the body while you're putting the tube down into their stomach. And those I will tell you, babies for the first 3 months, they want to bite you. They're different.
I believe
They
it.
want to bite you. They are so defensive. You can't handle them like you handle the adults. You will get bitten. And if you give them any leeway while you're trying to put that tube in there, and you relax just a little bit, they can turn that little head and get one fang in you, boom, like that. And what you'll see is it'll bleb up and it'll bleed, and then after a couple of hours, you're saying, man, it's hurting, and you can feel it, but you can't see the fang puncture. And that's the case with a lot of them that are brought in. You can't see the fang puncture.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, that was one of the things too when we first had you on THP, was that I had always heard that coral snake bites, for the most part, were pretty much painless, but you had explained that that's not always the case.
well, if you read the case histories, there was one where a young boy in Central Gainesville area in the 60s, where it was one of the fatalities, one of the very few fatalities. And he was bitten, and he went in and told his mom, I got bit, and she looked, and there was no pain and no nothing. And an hour 18, he died. And so then you read cases where these bites it can be painless. Well, I've had 4 in 50 years. My partners have had bites. Every single one of our bites has been extremely painful. It hurts.
Wow.
We've not had, and by the way, 2 of my bites from the babies that hurt like heck were very minute amount of one fang. So you're talking maybe 0.16 milligrams, hardly no venom, but enough to have pain. And when you don't have anti-venom and you ride it out, here's what happens. After about 6 or 7 days, the pain gets less. And the swelling, it does swell. I swelled all the way to the wrist. Swelling resides. No local damage. But then all of a sudden, you go through a period of days where it's numb. It like kills. It's like a deadening. There's something in the venom that kills the nerves. The finger was numb to touch for a good week and a half, and then it came back. So I'm sure with anti-venom, a lot of that is negated and neutralized, but the venom itself is very interesting. And there's they're doing work on Alzheimer's with it now, looking at some of the activity with it, and it's definitely got some pain attributes too that could be looked at. The problem with this venom is when you're doing that with cobra venom, you got a lot of volume, it's easy to get.
Right.
And so researchers don't want to pay this enormous amount of what we got to get to sell the venom. You can sell rattlesnake venom for $200, $300, $400 a gram. Coral snake venom's thousands of dollars a gram. But my God, it takes 125 coral snake bites to equal one rattlesnake bite.
Yeah.
That's round figures, but that's about it.
Wow. Now, just going back to bites real quick, on that neonate bite that was no antivenom was received, was there any kind of renal issues at all?
Any kind of renal issues?
Yeah.
No renal issues.
Okay.
No ptosis. What I did is I every couple hours I'd go to the mirror and I'd open my mouth and raise my tongue up and down, left and right. The first time you do that and your tongue goes another way, then I would have gone in and gotten antivenom. But
yeah,
I mean, here we are going through this process. This was, I don't want to be using the only antivenom that was available at that time if a kid gets bit. I mean, so
sure.
Right.
Definitely don't want to use it if you don't need it. And
right.
I haven't experienced many bites over the 55 years. You kind of know your body, and you kind of know at what point you need to go.
Sure.
That's nothing I would recommend to anybody. Because,
no, of course not. Of course not.
The other thing is, keep in mind, I'm looking at the snake. I know the size. I know the potential output it could give me, worst case scenario. And that's the same thing with any of the snakes we handle. We get a feel for if you get a bite and you get that metallic taste within seconds, you just put the snake away and you got to get antivenom. Yeah. It's going to be rough. It's going to be a bad one.
Is there documentation as far as like demographics of the bites? Is it mostly kids?
It's mostly males, and it mostly involves alcohol. I will tell you that. But there's I don't know the number. There are quite a few kids that are bitten, probably because they see it and it looks pretty, and
Like,
the kids
like
are
the Tide Pods.
Yeah, it's like it. That's right. Exactly.
Oh man,
a Tide Pod with teeth.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's incredible.
So one last thing, I guess, unless Phil had something else.
No, there's one other thing, but ask your question.
I was going to ask. So, being a half-assed diabetic, and this is something that if we ever got Leslie Boyer on, I wanted to ask, pick her brain about it too. But like, we all know that, heart conditions and things like that are definitely major factors when it comes to snake bite. But things like diabetes, how do those affect snake bite in general? Not necessarily just with Fulvius or any other micrurus, but overall.
Well, not being a physician, I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I'll give you my my rationale to that. Spencer would be a good one, or Leslie would be a great one to address that. Most of the problems that we see with envenomations here in the United States has to do with blood clotting or not clotting. Mm-hmm. And very, very few of the venom proteins I don't think are going to cause you to have a sugar issue. Like the labs you want to look at in general are platelets, because they run at 150 to 450,000, 150K to 450. If you get below 100, if you get down in that 50, well, you could bleed out. Yeah, now you're in the thrombocytopenia range, and that comes in varying degrees. I don't know if that would affect your sugar. I don't think so. The other thing they're going to look at is fibrinogen and prothrombin and INR levels to see what the clotting factors are like. It's all about that. Nobody's looking at your sugar level, I don't believe. In fact, they even quit doing D-dimer. So I don't know that diabetes would be as much of a problem as would be if you were on Eliquis or a blood thinner,
right?
Or you had that kind of issue.
Oh yeah,
because that's going to create a problem now trying to interpret the labs. Mm-hmm. But the diabetes question would be a good one to ask Spencer or Leslie in particular. I don't know.
First thing I think of is circulation issues in the extremities, mostly the feet.
Well, now it depends. If you're just diabetic by number, that's one thing. If you got neuropathy and you do have swelling and you get bitten in the leg, yeah, you're going to have you're going to have lymphatic problems. That's going to add to, it's not going to change what they do.
Right.
But what it could change is you could end up with some permanent damage, that somebody that didn't have that problem wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're diabetic to a point where your legs are swelling and you're having those issues, that's not good. That's a comorbidity that's going to complicate. You want a good physician on your side when that's being done.
So now, if someone is active Coumadin user, they're on thinners, what could you recommend to them to speak to their physician or speak to the ER doctors and say, hey, I'm on Coumadin, this is going to make it even worse, Well,
keep in mind here, when they pull those labs and the labs get out of whack, the treatment is more antivenom. I mean, for example, if your platelets fall with a snake bite, the treatment's not a blood transfusion or blood. That's not going to bring your platelets up,
right?
Because that venom's going to eat that new blood, going to eat them new platelets up just like the old.
Oh yeah.
So so while they're giving you more antivenom, it's like this young man that just had this pulmonary embolism. So they got to start giving him blood thinners after a water moccasin bite for the pulmonary embolism. So the point is they got to watch those labs very carefully and keep them in the range where they don't get in trouble.
Yeah,
it's going to affect how they treat the bite and whether they put some anticoagulant on you, because now you got both. You've been on Coumadin and your blood's thin. Now we're dumping all this venom in there. It's going to thin it even more. There's eight clotting factors. They're very complicated.
Wow.
And different clotting factors work different. And so a good ER physician is going to know how to treat that.
Okay. See, I have so many questions in that arena because my wife has something like with her factor 5 where she in the past she's had clotting issues, whether it's too much or too little, I can't remember, but stuff like that, that's stuff that I definitely would want to ask Leslie or Spencer. It's just there's so many questions.
Well, I'll tell you, the most important thing you want to disclose or tell when you've been bitten is, hey, here's my health issues. I've got this, and this, and these are the medications I'm taking. And they're going to want to know when was the last time you took this and this and this. Mm-hmm. The biggest, not problem, but the biggest mistake that has long-lasting damage that we see and we discourage is that when you take an ER doctor, he's used to treating car accidents, he's used to treating trauma, and when people come in and they get swelling, they get compartmental pressure issues. Okay, the fasciotomy has a place in that to save the muscle. The snake bite imitates that, and to them, they think there's a compartmental pressure problem, so they want to do a fasciotomy. And every good snake bite physician that's treated a lot of bites will say 98% of the time, maybe not, you don't need to do a fasciotomy. Give more antivenom. And unfortunately, you would think by now that word spread around. It's not. And the reality of the problem is this: you're a private keeper. You've got your own antivenom. You got a protocol. You've been in the emergency room and you've talked to the doctors. Well, guess what? Every 6 months, every 3 months, every year, that whole emergency room's got new doctors. Most of the emergency room contracts out their ER doctors. They don't stay there. And it's like what you went through and got working and have this develop this relationship last month, next month may be all new people. Yeah. And it's frustrating. We still have that problem here. If we go in and one of the docs that know us and has treated a bite, we're in good shape. If some of them, someone want to do, they'll point a chopper and send you. They want to transport you and send you right up to the trauma center, not even give you antivenom on site. Crazy. I mean, they should stabilize you and give you the antivenom, and when you're stable, then transport. But, right. So now, one of us, Carl, has a tremendous relationship up there in DeLand with his facility. And he had a long-term ER guy there and that ran ER. And he has since retired, so Carl's starting to experience some of that. It takes a lot of effort to keep those people plugged in, invite them out, and stay in touch with them, because his dilemma is usually going to be an exotic thing.
Sure.
But that's, a lot of the keepers out there, they got the same issue. Fortunately, we here in Florida have three, we got three antivenom banks. Two are very active. There's one in the Tampa area, Brooksville area, Venom 2, Joe Kiefer runs, and of course Venom 1 that's down there in Miami is fantastic. And actually Joe Kiefer's Venom 3. Venom 2 was up around the Villages, and Ben Abo got that going, but they don't do exotics. They were just going to stock coral snake, antivenom, and crowfab. But you'll see the hospitals, they won't take the antivenom. They want to transport.
Yeah.
That's just their that's the way they do it.
I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot in the private sector when it comes to bites. Is I think people have this idyllic vision that they'll be conscious to the point to where they get to the hospital, which I'm sure most of the time they would be.
I'll drive myself,
I'll drive myself. Yeah. I'll be there to tell the doctor what's going on. I'll be there to explain to the doctor what bit me, and he'll be able to take my word for it and, give me this random drug that I brought with me if I had it.
Exactly.
And
it's
then
expired.
Like just the whole thing. It's like the nightmare doesn't just stop as soon as you walk through the hospital doors. It's like,
no, it doesn't.
if you have a
I
doctor
can-
that is really high on their own supply and knows better than you do, no matter what you tell them, then like that's another entire issue in itself. And so it's like there's so many other factors that go into that. Because I know there's people that get venomous and stuff, and it's always like, well, if I get bit, I'll just go to the hospital. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anything's good. Like anything's gonna happen. Like the outcome
You know
may
what?
not be better.
Here's what works better for our situation. There's 3 poison control centers in Florida. One in Miami, one in Tampa, one in Jacksonville. Okay, I know the people in Tampa that would handle my bites. They come over here. They bring their interns, and we have a great relationship. And they are extremely anti-venom savvy, both local and exotic. So when people call me and they're heading in, I got bit, my son got bit, my neighbor got bit. The last person that doctor wants to talk to is me. I'm a civilian. I'm not a doctor. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a venom guy. Now, some of them that know me will have a conversation and give them a little support and it'll go. But most of them will not even take a consult. I'll say, hey, I can put you in touch with 2 or 3 other physicians that have treated hundreds of snake bites. Would you please consult with them? No. Okay. I tell the family, insist that doctor call the Poison Control Center for consultation. And that should work good for you, Phil, is
Yeah.
you get that Poison Control Center in Miami, talking to that doctor, and have your wife or your family make sure that happens, then you will have the greatest ally you can get. I know Miami's good. I know Tampa's good. I don't know that much about Jacksonville. I would think that they would be okay, but that works for us. Now, Smitty, up where you are, do you have a poison control center that you're familiar with, or?
I don't.
Okay, well, there is one. They're all over the United States, and
Right.
Most, like in Florida, it's all the same number. One, I forget the 800 number, but it knows where you're calling from, so it routes you to the right one. Like if you're in a Jacksonville area and dial that same 800 number, you're going to go to the Jacksonville one, or Miami the same. And Miami, that's where all our antivenom is, down there at fire department there with Rusty and Chris, and they do a great job. And we're very fortunate from an exotic antivenom standpoint that they're still going, they're still being funded.
Yeah.
God, imagine the calls that the Poison Control Center people get. Just in
Well, yeah, and I
Talk about Tide Pods.
general. I just drank a bottle of shampoo and I don't feel good. Help.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay.
Oh. Well, gentlemen, is there anything else you want to touch base on?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just about got it all.
All right.
Well, enjoyed chatting with you two. It's been
Hell of a
lot
show,
fun.
sir.
I hope it a little bit of, maybe some people learned a little bit here and there. We still have
absolutely.
We have so much left to learn.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the one thing that's constant with everything I've done with snakes and venoms is every time you reach a point and you really feel like you're gaining and you're learning, you wake up and you enter into another day and you realize how much you don't know.
Oh yeah.
Because one thing about science is it never remains constant. And every time we learn a little more, and I go back 30, 40 years ago, and I'm thinking, I mean, snake venom was so simple. It was, and now I look at where we are today. All these recombinant things where they're putting synthetics together and taking snake venom glands out and actually growing the venom gland to make venom. I mean, this is fine. It's working. Of course, it has to cross over that monetary. Is it going to be too expensive to do? But boy, go to a venom week. Have you guys ever been to a venom week?
No, I want to.
Yeah.
It's almost never in Florida, but one year it was in Gainesville. Next year, I think it's going to be in North Carolina.
Oh,
But,
see, that's doable for me because Charlotte
that's
ain't
doable
that far
for
of a
you.
drive. Raleigh ain't that far of a drive.
Now, see, forgive me, but isn't it invite only?
No,
No. Okay.
no. when it started, it was a small group, a lot of physicians that were treating snake bite. And then it got into some zoo people and some venom people. And then over the period of years, it's gotten into, they're bringing vets in doing presentations, and they're opening up anybody that wants to learn.
Wow.
Do they
College
record
kids,
any of that?
school. No, they don't. They used to, but what happens is a lot of the people that are presenting papers there, they haven't published them yet,
Okay.
and they don't want them to get out.
Right.
But if you went online and looked at it, pull the agenda, it's a 4-day, and you could look at the agenda and figure out, well, do I want to go the whole 4 days, or do I just want to go, day 1 and 3 or something?
Mhm.
But the topics will blow your mind.
Yeah.
Wow.
It'll blow your mind. There's
Awesome.
one going to happen here next week in Rodeo, New Mexico. It's actually the old biology of pit vipers. And that's the forum, but they're going to be discussing venomous snake bites for looks like the whole 4 days.
Wow.
They got some really tremendous speakers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to check the calendar and see when if it is happening in North Carolina, it's definitely going to be on my.
Just Google Venom Week 2024.
Okay.
Excellent.
It's been out west the last couple of years, hasn't it? I think it was in Colorado.
Last one was in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's been in Colorado. It's been in Hawaii. It's been in Omaha. It's been in Texas. They try to move it around.
Yeah.
Never been in Orlando. Never been in Miami.
East Coast doesn't get enough love.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, thank you so much, sir, for coming
Okay.
on. This was absolutely fantastic.
All right. Phil, Spinny, you're welcome. I've enjoyed it. You guys have a great week. Okay.
Thank you.
You too, sir. Thanks so much.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
This episode was brought to you by fulviusapparel.com. It's right here on my man titties. Come on. Fulvius Apparel on Facebook, Fulvius Apparel on Instagram, Fulvius Apparel. Use the code SENDIT at checkout. Get free shipping if you are in the U.S. now until the end of the month. And then blackboxcages.com. Another code to use at checkout, THN. Save yourself some money. Shipping's expensive. Anywhere you go, this will help you out a little bit. It's not going to be a ton. It's not half off or anything crazy like that. But it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And you will not be disappointed with a rack or cage that you get from them, without a doubt. I guarantee it. You will not be unhappy with it.
Not only does Smitty guarantee it, I will also guarantee it.
I guarantee that you'll enjoy it. Like if you get it and for whatever reason you aren't happy with it, there's nothing I can do for you. But there's no reason that you shouldn't be unhappy with it because their stuff's
Right.
awesome.
Exactly.
And then also awesome are the awesome people up in the Pacific Northwest, Jeff and Kendra at Puget Sound Pythons. Give them a follow on Facebook and Instagram as well. THP this week, I guess. I hadn't talked to Jake. I need to find out.
Nice.
But it was a great show. Always really enjoy talking to Jack. Again, one of the people in this hobby or industry, whatever you want to call it, field that I just have nothing but respect for. And he's working with the coolest lapids the U.S. has to offer. So
Very true.
if I could only find one alive now, that'd be.
I know, right? I just want to close this laptop and just get in the car and go find one. And I know it's not going to happen.
This will probably summon them to be at my neighbor's house for the next week, and I'll get pictures saying, "Look, I found another one." And I'll just send them the middle finger emoji.
Well, good.
Poor old Marianne, just be like, "Look, lady, I know you care about your dogs. I like your dogs too. Your dogs are going to be safe. Why do you send this picture to me 3 hours after you've seen it, or while I'm at work where I can do nothing about it?"
Yeah, right.
Killing me.
Such is life.
But I mean, fortunately, just like the folks that called me for that copperhead, the weekend before last, they're a lot of them are nature people, so they understand that they're not people to grab the shovel.
Yeah.
You know, like they understand that there's copperheads and there's things that can potentially hurt them, but I think they also fully understand that, you know, the likelihood of something happening is very slim. And I think a lot of them are just concerned that if they're out walking the dog at night or something, which a lot of them do, you know, it just, I live too far from the water. The water's like not even a half a mile that direction. The same neighbors that are seeing the coral snakes live on the water, salt water, on the marsh, right there. It doesn't make any sense.
On the mash.
Yeah. They got their docks and their boats and their elevators in their house. Anyways, it's a great episode.
Great episode.
Thank you all. We'll see you later.
Bye.